On August 28, 1963, nearly 250,000 people came to the Lincoln Memorial. They heard King give his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Much of the nation applauded Martin, but Malcolm X denounced it as a farce on Washington.
While King was having a dream, the rest of us Negroes were having a nightmare. The president and the administration in Washington ought to get Academy Awards for directing the best show of the century. The Negroes spent a lot of money, had a good time, enjoyed a real circus atmosphere. But now that it's all over, and they're still jobless, landless, and homeless. So what did it all accomplish?
The optimism Martin felt in the aftermath of the March on Washington did not last long. Just a few weeks afterwards, 4 little black girls were killed in the bombing of Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church, which had been a gathering place for protesters. A shaken Martin delivered the eulogy at the children's funeral.
We gather this afternoon in the quiet of this sanctuary to pay our last tribute of respect to these beautiful children of God. These children, unoffending, innocent, and beautiful, were the victims of one of the most vicious and heinous attacks ever perpetuated against humanity. Yet they died nobly. So they have something to say to us in their deaths. They have something to say to the federal government who compromise with the undemocratic principle of Southern Dixiecrats and the hypocrisy of white-wing Northern Republicans. And they have something to say to us, that we must not merely be concerned with who murdered them, but about the system, the philosophy, the way of life that produced the murderers. In spite of the darkness of this hour, we must not despair. We must not become bitter, nor harbor the retaliate, deny and to retaliate. We must not lose hope. Come to you this afternoon because we feel that the Birmingham situation has reached a point where it threatens not only the life and stability of Birmingham and Alabama, but our whole nation. We feel that the Birmingham situation has reached a state of civil disorder. But the real problem that we face is this. The Negro community is at a breaking point. There's a great deal of frustration and confusion there. Now, we've been consistent in standing up for nonviolence, but more and more, we're faced with the situation of our people saying to us, what's the use? Now, President Kennedy, I'm convinced that if something isn't done to give the Negro a new sense of hope and a sense of protection, well, then we will all see the worst race riots that we have ever seen in this country.
I know that this bombing is particularly difficult. Everybody just has to keep their nerve. It's because you gentlemen in the community have conducted yourselves in the way you have, that public opinion is with you. But of course, when your people start going for their guns, well, that will just wipe away the support that you've built up. I can't do very much, and Congress can't do very much, unless we keep the support of white communities throughout the country. Tell the Negro communities that this is a very hard price which they have to pay to get this job done.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now.
The president is dead.
I am shocked and grief-stricken at the tragic assassination of John Kennedy. His death is a great loss to America and the whole world. But the assassin killed not only a man, but a whole complex of illusions. The Negro knows well the political assassination. For in the life of the Negro civil rights leader, the whine of bullets and the roar of bombs have all too often pierced the silence of the night. We were all involved in the death of Jack Kennedy. We tolerated hatred. We tolerated the sick stimulation of violence in all walks of life.
When it was announced that the president was dead, Martin said,
Coretta, this is what's going to happen to me also. No, Coretta. I keep trying to tell you. This is a sick society.
I couldn't say, it won't happen to you. I felt he was right. It was a painfully agonizing silence.
As ML stood receiving the Nobel Prize and tears streamed down my face, I gave thanks to God that out of that little Georgia town I'd been spared to see this and so much more.
I was proud of Martin and of what he stood for. Forgive me, Lord, I prayed silently. Forgive me if I am filled with pride, but that's how I feel. Our trip home was glorious. New York gave Martin a hero's welcome. Martin also spoke directly with the people of Harlem about his experience in receiving the Nobel Prize. There he is!
The last several days I've been on the mountaintop.
Yes.
I really wish I could stay there. But I must go back down into the valley now.
All right now.
Because my brothers and sisters down in Mississippi and Alabama are sweltering under the heat of oppression.
We ain't got the prize. We got the problem. I don't want no white man giving me medals. If I'm following a general and he's leading me into battle, and the enemy tends to give him awards, I get suspicious of him. Especially if he gets the peace medal before the war is over.
Malcolm X was Martin's sharpest critic. But there were indications in late 1964 that the two leaders might come closer together. Malcolm had left the Nation of Islam, a religious group that saw white people as devils. After traveling to Mecca and seeing that Islamic people came in all colors, Malcolm returned to the United States still convinced that black nationalism and self-defense were the correct strategies. But now he hoped to work more closely with Martin and other leaders.
I'm not out to fight other Negro leaders or organizations. We must find a common approach, a common solution to a common problem. I've forgotten everything bad other leaders have said about me, and I pray they can forget the many bad things I've said about them. Therefore, as leaders, we must not concern ourselves with the threat we seem to pose to each other's personal prestige. We should concentrate our efforts on solving the unending hurt being done daily to our people here in America.
Martin was skeptical about Malcolm's change of heart. But in March of 1964, when he left the press conference at the Senate building in Washington, he found himself face to face with Malcolm.
Malcolm, good to see you.
Good to see you. Now you're going to get investigated. I'll tell you one of the dangers of Martin Luther King. King himself is probably a good man. Means well and all that. But the danger is that white people use King. They use him to satisfy their own fears. They give him power beyond his actual influence. The danger is when they blow up King and try to fool themselves into thinking that Negroes are nonviolent, patient, and long-suffering. They've got a powder keg in their house. And instead of doing something to diffuse the powder keg, they're putting a blanket up, trying to make believe there is no powder keg.
Malcolm X is very articulate, but I totally disagree with many of his philosophical and political views. Now, I don't want to seem self-righteous or absolutist, or like I have the only way and the only truth. Maybe he does have some of the answers. But I've often wished that he would speak less of violence, because violence isn't going to solve any of our problems. In his articulation of the litany of despair of the Negro community, without offering any positive or creative alternative, well, Malcolm has done himself and our community a great disservice.
Early in 1965, when Martin became involved in a voter registration campaign in Selma, Alabama, Malcolm also came to Selma. Student activists insisted that Malcolm speak. Still rejecting Martin's philosophy of nonviolence, Malcolm nevertheless tried to be supportive.
I am 100% for any effort put forth by black people in this country to have access to the ballot. And I believe that since the ballot is our right, we are within our rights to use any means necessary to secure these rights. And I think that people in this part of the world would do well to listen to Dr. Martin and give him what he's asking for, and give it to him fast before some other factions come along and do it another way.
King sought to counteract Malcolm's influence by urging the students at Brown's Chapel to remain committed to nonviolence.
After I spoke, I was introduced to Malcolm X for the first time. I was impressed with his obvious intelligence, and he seemed quite gentle.
Mrs. King, would you tell Dr. King that I wanted to visit him in jail, but I won't get the chance to now because I have to leave for New York in order to catch a plane for London. But I wanted Dr. King to know I didn't come to Selma to make his job difficult. I really did come thinking I could make it easy. If white people realize what the alternative is, perhaps they'd be more willing to hear Dr. King.
We can never know whether Malcolm and Martin would have joined forces. Just a few weeks after Malcolm spoke in Selma, he was assassinated. Martin wrote to Malcolm's widow, Betty Shabazz.
I was certainly saddened by the shocking and tragic assassination of your husband. While we did not always see eye to eye on methods to solve the race problem, I always had a deep affection for Malcolm. I felt that he had a real ability to place his finger on the existence and root of the problem. No one can ever doubt